Greetings, everybody! My guest today is Roy Worley, a professional voice actor and audiobook narrator with over 250 titles recorded. He has been full-time voice acting for the last 10 years, and some of his better-known clients include Firestone, Pizza Hut, Cheez-Its, Tiffany's & Company, and more. A huge shout-out to the dozens of fans who have left iTunes reviews. It's a gigantic help in getting this show to reach an even larger audience. And a big thank you to anyone who has shared this with friends or family. I immensely appreciate it. Now, let us immortalize our voices. Roy Worley, thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you.
Well, I'm glad to be had.
Alrighty, well, for anyone out there in the audience who might be thinking your voice is already sounding familiar, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been a voice actor for about 10 years now, and that includes a whole wide array of different things that require a voice. Everything from radio and TV commercials, which might be the most obvious of all the bunch, down to what they call explainer videos. If you walk through a big box store and you see on the end cap a video going and some voice is explaining the product or tool that you see, that's also voiceover. Telephony, what we call on-hold messages or interactive voice recordings for small and large companies alike. I do those. Audiobooks, I'm getting more and more audiobook work. I've recorded now 254 audiobooks, and that number is growing. Could have done more had I started in earnest in audiobooks earlier on, but developed other aspects of my voiceover work first. And then a lot of people, like it or not, are required to do computer-based training. We call that e-learning. And I voiced a number of those for companies like Tiffany and Company and Bausch and different companies. A hospital client that I have, I've done a good deal of work for them in that area. A lot of voiceover for internal videos to train people within big corporations and that kind of thing. So that gives you an idea.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a quite the broad work you've got yourself into.
There are a lot of spokes in the voiceover wheel.
So how'd you get started in it?
You know, when I was about 10 years ago, I found myself making a career change. I'm a pastor, preacher, been a missionary in South America, fluent in Spanish. And rather than depending upon any one church for my income, I believe the Lord opened the door for me to do this to provide my living, which actually is very freeing because then I can help smaller congregations who may not be able to support a full-time living wage, as it were. And so the very first thing that I got into, because of another voice talent who was nearby, very successful voice talent, was in fact audiobooks. That was the first thing that I ventured into. And started auditioning for audiobooks and found that I could do that. Regret that I didn't have the training that I now have early on, would have been more successful. And then began exploring other ways to let people know that I was in the business. But before that, you have to have, just in case anybody's thinking about going into voiceover, just having a good voice, that's not even a requirement, really. You need to be able to read, you need to be able to act, do a little bit of acting. But more than anything else, you need to get coaching. You need to invest in coaching. Then you have to invest in a good space. I'm sitting in my studio right now, not in the recording booth, but in my studio as a whole. It's in my basement. And we jokingly say, those of us that have our studios in our basement, we work underground in a padded room and talk to ourselves all day. And sometimes I get paid for that, which is really cool. Other times it's just for my own entertainment. But getting coaching is very important, and then a professional website, and then professionally made demos. If you were to go to my website, which is very simply royworley.com, you could hear demos of the different kinds of works that I have done and therefore are looking to get more of. And it's important. In order to be taken seriously in the industry, you have to have professionally made demos.
Yeah, and how does somebody get started in voice acting?
There are a lot of places out there now, even within the last 10 years. There's a place on the East Coast called Edge Studios. I don't remember if they're in New York or one of the other states over there, that offer some training and can get it online. If you Googled voice acting training, you get a whole lot of different people. You got to be careful. There are a lot of people out there that claim to be voice actors, but basically they're taking people's money. And it's the same with any industry. You have to be cautious and careful. One of the go-to places that I like is called the Global Voice Acting Academy, GVA. And it's totally online. It's out in LA. It was created by a couple of people, Christina Milicia and David Rosenthal. Christina Milicia is a very successful voice talent. She voices a lot of cartoon voices. Most recent commercial that I know that she did was a national commercial for Laughing Cow dairy products. David Rosenthal's a voice actor in his own right. And so what they've done is they've put together an amalgamation of a lot of professionals who also not only are successful in their profession and their spoke of the voiceover wheel, but they offer coaching. And so you want to tap into coaches. A good coach will teach you. Usually many people will start off with a commercial demo for doing obviously commercials. And so you want to get coaching for that. And sometimes a coach will say, yeah, I think you're ready. Let's go move forward with getting your demo produced. And so there are demo producers out there. There are a lot of good ones. There are some that are unsavory and not really good, but you can't go wrong with Global Voice Acting Academy. Edge Studios, Chuck Duran, who is out in LA, he's going to be producing my new demos in November. There are others that their names escape me, but some good qualified people. And then you start marketing yourself. You have to market the heck out of yourself. And if you were raised like I was, where your parents said, don't brag on yourself, don't draw attention to yourself, always think of others first, that's a challenge to say, okay, pay attention to me, but that's just the way it works. You got to let people know that you offer the service, and you market to video production companies, you market to e-learning production companies, you reach out to corporations about doing their telephony, different things like that. And it's just, anybody that's in sales will tell you, it's kind of a sales funnel approach, right? You got to put a lot in, you got to stuff the pipe big on the end for, steady flow to come out at the other end. And sometimes that can be years before you may reach out to somebody in a production company. That's happened to me. And then months later, they call you and say, hey, we've got a job we think fits your voice, and we'd like to have you do it.
Yeah, and speaking of your voice, you have a great voice.
Thank you.
How much of your work do you just use your regular voice without having to augment it or do any kind of change?
Yeah. Well, it used to be that back in the old days that there were television announcers, and they had that typical announcer voice. And now that's anathema. Nobody wants an announcer voice. Everybody wants what's called the conversational voice. And I'm actually doing, you have to get ongoing training. So I am training with another coach. She's out in great connections in Hollywood. And she is a voice actor and a stage actor in her own right. And so she has really taught me stuff in the last month in preparation for my new demo to just talk, learn how to talk like a normal person, because that's what most people want anymore in their videos and in their commercials. And even in the e-learning, we want you to be conversational. So it's like you're talking to a friend about something. Now, there are some occasions where for a television commercial, you'll have to do more of the announcery thing. And they will tell you that. We want an announcer's voice for this. But that's a good question. It's a very good question. In fact, people anymore, voice seekers, don't want the announcer sound. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, say you get picked up for just something very basic in the voice acting realm. What could someone just beginning expect to spend time-wise on it and to get compensated?
Boy, that's a wide spectrum there. I would say if people are interested in what typical compensation for the various spokes in the wheel, for lack of a better word, that's what I call it, of voiceover. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, both Edge Studios and Global Voice Acting, GVAA, or Global Voice Acting Academy, I call it GVA as GVAA, Global Voice Acting Academy, have what they call rate guides, rate sheets. And they have done thorough research by polling successful voice talent nationwide about what you can expect to charge for different things. For instance, there's one rate for recording for a kiosk, like I mentioned in the big box stores, or even in a lobby or something. There are different rates for commercials, and the rates within television commercials are different because of, you may have a local market that's a small market, and you can expect to charge, say, $300 to do it. And if you do it on your own, and many of the jobs that I do on my own without direction, I record, and I've learned to do some light mastering of the audio so that they have a finished product they can plug right into their video. A regional market would be like, I think it's 2 or more states or 3 states, or, that might command a different rate of, say, $600. If you get a national ad, it used to be a lot of those were union jobs, and so you get paid residuals, and that's what everybody wants. But that's at the top of the pyramid, where the point is, where there are very few people compared to the thousands that are in voiceover that get that work. I actually have made more money narrating e-learning modules than I have in doing a regional commercial.
Interesting.
So I would, and the rates vary. Some people charge 15 cents a word. That's really, really low. It's not even the industry standard. It's below standard. Some charge by the finished minute, meaning I send you a recording that's ready to be used. You don't have to do anything to it. And sometimes that's anywhere from $15 per minute up to $30 a minute, depending on the client. You have to know your client. If you're working for a Fortune 500 company, they may have budgeted quite a lot for their e-learning. If you're working for, I've done some government work. I speak Spanish, so I've done a little bit of Spanish work. I don't market myself for that because I sound like an American speaking Spanish to the Spanish ear, to the Spanish speaking person. And I've done a few modules on fair housing in a certain state. And they've come back to me a couple of times for that. Don't know why they don't choose me for the English, though. I need to ask the guy that.
Right.
At any rate, it's and then telephony. If you're doing a small business, I actually have a small business rate, and so I added to that, I say $150 to get them set up. But added to that, I do copywriting for them. A lot of people don't realize if you put somebody on hold for 30 seconds, that's a 30-second commercial.
Yeah.
And so I helped them write copy that'll inform the person on hold about other aspects of that business that they may not have known. So it's a long answer, but I could have talked more and more and more about that. But I think if they go to Edge Studios and Global Voice Acting Academy, Google it, they have a rate guide, a rate sheet.
And that's really cool because a lot of things, that are a little more freelance don't. And people they start guessing at prices.
You're shooting in the dark. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I never thought about that because I've called, my doctor's office and they've put me on hold before, and I've definitely heard somebody's voice on the other end, like, we also have these new flu shots that are coming out this year, and you need to come in and get your thing set up.
And I have recorded some of those for hospitals on the West Coast, the East Coast rather. So
nice.
Yeah.
So, do you have your favorite spoke of the wheel?
I enjoy doing audiobooks because I like to read. I like a good story. I don't do a lot of fiction because of my faith. I'm deliberately limited on the kind of material that I read. It's not me being judgmental of anybody. It's just me, being true to what I believe. But I really enjoy cowboy Western novels. And part of that is because I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I live outside of Chicago for the last almost 25 years now. slipping into a cowboy character is like putting on your favorite pair of tennis shoes or house shoes or whatever. I just slide right into it. And so, it's like, ain't no thing to just slide right into that cowboy accent, man. I mean, that's just who I am in private anyway.
Oh,
So, and I
boy,
enjoy it.
that is a great accent as well.
That's how I talk to my wife.
Is it?
Yeah, when we let our hair down. Oh wow! By the way, you see me, they don't. But I don't have any hair left to let down. But the point of it is that we all have our normal way of speaking. We have our professional. I'm not going to call it a mask, but our professional demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. But I do that. I've done about 15 cowboy audiobooks, and I've recently, just in the last few months, gotten on the roster of a division of Recorded Books, which is the biggest audiobook production company around, I think, in this country, if not the world. And they have several divisions. One is Tantor Media, and they also have Christian audiobooks. And I just finished my first audiobook with them and hoping to have more. And it was interesting how I got into that through some coaching I received from a very successful voice actor in the, particularly in the audiobook world, is a guy named Sean Pratt. He'd be a good guy to have on your show as well.
Yeah.
Sean has done 12 to 1,300 audiobooks.
Wow.
He's a machine. Many of them in these days are nonfiction, and I got nonfiction coaching from him because even in nonfiction, the broad umbrella topic, there are different spokes. Believe it or not, there are audiobooks of cookbooks. I had to learn how to do that. There are audiobooks that are more business and audiobooks that are different ones, different spokes. But I like, in audiobooks, I really like, in the fiction realm, cowboy. But one of the things that I've been working toward over the past 10 years is getting to the point where I could do what they call promo work. And if you watch television at all, you hear promos or promotionals for television shows, like coming this Friday on CBS, that kind of stuff. And then they name the show. And they don't even talk like that anymore. That was just me diving into that old announcer style. And the same lady that's giving me the coaching for a new commercial demo just coached me in a new promo demo, which I said both of those new ones will be recorded in mid-November. And then I have to start marketing myself to potential agents and managers. I do have a couple of talent agents, but my talent agent in Chicago's considered a commercial town in voiceover. But I want to get into promo. And so I'm training for it, been encouraged by peers, by coaches. It's a tough area to crack into, but I'm working hard. We'll see what God allows.
Well, and good luck. I hope for the best.
Yeah.
So, just thinking about some of these huge numbers of books, especially like you were saying with Mr. Pratt.
Yeah.
And now into the 4 digits worth of books. How long does it take to record an audiobook?
About for one finished hour of audio, which means it's been proofed, it's been corrected, it's quality control and mastering, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for one finished hour. And like the book I just finished was 9 hours and 37 minutes. And different companies have different rates they will pay. I have a set rate. If somebody were to ask me, I would quote my rate. But with Tantor and the last book that I did, they quoted me a certain rate. It was less than my standard rate. But they also kick in 13% toward the union, which is SAG-AFTRA, which means when I join the union, I'll have some retirement money already built up. And so that's one of the positives and one of the benefits of being with that union. And I'm moving toward that, and we'll see just when that happens. Nice.
And you try and get as much as you can in one day as far as recording material, or do you try and keep a healthy spacing?
That's a great question. When doing what we call long form narration, which includes audiobooks and e-learning, if it's a long module, you want to take a break every 15 to 20 minutes. You hydrate. I keep my handy dandy water bottle, and at the end of each page, you take a sip of water. I can record about 3 hours a day. taking those breaks. And then the voice just gets tired.
Yeah.
Guys that have more stamina can do more. I get up, I'll walk out in my backyard and walk around when the weather's nice. So, I go to the gym and do a light workout and things like that. You got to take care of your physical body in order for your voice to be any good, right? You get into a rhythm, you look at how many pages you have to record, and you look at your deadline and you say, in order to reach that deadline, I need to ideally record X number of pages per day. And sometimes that works out to 2 to 4 hours, depending on the content. If it's more technical and you have to look up the pronunciations of words, I did one book called Disunited Nations, written by Peter Zion. And he's a very well-known author. He's a geopolitical economist, writes about the geopolitical economy of the world and how the nations interact and makes his own predictions and things like that. I had to look up a lot of names of cities and countries. And then in that regard, I don't try to pronounce them as if I were trying to pronounce them like a native, because I just can't do it. And so you give it the best American accent, hoping people will understand, knowing full well that the native speakers of those countries are cringing when you say it. But that's okay. That's part of the work. So yeah, it takes a bit of time to do. It is the longest investment of time in the voiceover world is doing audiobooks. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I can only imagine how tired your voice would be because, as you can probably already tell, I lean fairly heavy on my guest to do a lot of the talking.
Yeah. And you wouldn't believe it, but there is a total physical tiredness after narrating. You can't see it behind me because I have a screen blocker, but I have a sofa behind me here in the studio. And when a nap attack comes on, I just yield and take a 10 to 15 minute nap, in order to keep going, especially if I'm on a tight deadline. If you push yourself to the point of tiredness, then it shows up in your work and you sound tired. So these are reasons, you don't try to do 8 hours a day. I'm not even sure I could ever do 8 hours a day of that kind of long form recording.
Yeah. So obviously, some of the e-learning modules and things like that have become much more needed and much more popular in the current climate that we have found ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Does that go for a lot of the rest of it? I mean, have audiobooks picked up in, the amount that are recording just because people are a little more at home or a little more time to themselves?
I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be yes, it probably has, especially when things were really locked down last year, when COVID was first detected and there were the lockdowns and so on, and nobody could go anywhere. And yes, one of my clients is a hospital, and they contacted me and said, you've done computer-based training or e-learning for us in the past. We can't have our in-person orientation for new employees, and we've got a 276 slide PowerPoint presentation we're going to be converting into training. Can you help us? And I said, well, yeah, when do you need it? They said, yesterday. I said, well, okay. And so last year I think I did 4 modules, huge modules for them, and I've done 1 this year for them. But regarding audiobooks, it would stand to reason, and I'm not sure how I could, you could find that out. Probably just Mr. Google, right? Just, sales of audiobooks. It would seem to me they've gone up. A buddy of mine that interviewed me for his podcast, he's a voice actor and he has a podcast for Voice Acting World. And he has people that are professionals on. And so he recorded back in August, and it just went live this week. And he told me off mic that there are more books to be narrated than there are narrators. And so again, if somebody says, well, hey, I read my kid bedtime stories, it can't be that hard. You don't want to think that. If you want to get into it, I encourage you, but do your research, do your homework, talk to coaches. Again, there are some places, I come back to Edge Studios. They help people break into that business of voiceover in general.
Yeah, and so I mean, obviously, you have your own studio, like you said, the padded room in the basement. Yeah. Do you have a preferred equipment that you use as far as a microphone or some kind of a setup?
Yeah, yes, I do, and those preferences came from talking to people that know about the technology. I use one microphone. It's a Rode NT1 for audiobook. It's a large diaphragm condenser mic, which we use in the voiceover world. And the microphone is usually about 6 inches from your mouth. And it's usually right above nose level, tilted down to your mouth to hopefully avoid plosives or pee pops and, hard breaths and things like that. It because I have a baritone, it gives me a little brightness in the read, and it's more forgiving because it is a large diaphragm, okay, inside of the casing of the microphone. I recently purchased a microphone because I'm getting hopefully into promo work, and it's what's called a shotgun mic. It's a long, slender tube, about 12 to 15 inches long. And you'll see them on top of cameras for news crews and things with a wind guard on it. It's just a super powerful, very sensitive mic, and the quality is fantastic. And that's a must for promo work. And so I have that. And then a lot of people who travel will take a travel kit with them. And that includes a laptop computer, then their audio interface. Mine I purchased is considered a high end. It's so high end, I don't even know all that it can do. It's kind of like driving a prototype car that's not going to be produced for 5 years in the future, and all you know how to do is put it in drive and push the pedal, whether it's electric or gas. But it makes a difference in the quality of the sound. And so I spent a little money on that. I built my own booth. I'm kind of handy, so I built my own booth. And a lot of people can't do that. But I found a plan online. And the guy did a great job. He was on video saying, okay, here's what you do and how you do it. And, oh, by the way, here's a parts list or a materials list from Home Depot with all the SKU numbers on it. Just go over there and pick up everything you need, which I did. And you can go on my Facebook page, Roy Worley Voiceovers, and see a picture of it, I think.
Very cool. Some of that is, for the audience, if anybody's out there listening that wants to get into it. Part of that is for me because
Okay.
I have a mic. When I wanted to get into podcasting, I just said, if I buy the stuff, I'll just start doing it.
Yeah.
And so I bought the equipment. It really wasn't all that expensive, but as I get more and more into it, I'm like, you know what, I need to invest some more money in this. I just find the microphone I have, I don't quite like for a lot of different reasons.
Can I ask what you're using?
Yeah, it's a Blue Yeti
Blue
X.
Yeti. Yeah, Blue Yeti. Yeah. Actually, that's kind of a standard, I think, in podcasting. So you can't go wrong with that. You actually have a good sound. I'm listening to you through my studio monitors, and you sound pretty good.
Oh, good. Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe just me picking myself apart, but when I do some audio editing, I'm like, man, this just sounds a little rough.
You know what? Welcome to the human race. None of us likes the way that our voice sounds. And there's some science behind that, explanations behind that. But yeah, I think you sound pretty good, actually. So I wouldn't sweat that too much, man. Don't go out and break your bank account.
Yeah, it's one of those that I figured, over time I'll get a boom arm or something, and that's supposed to help with some of the vibration.
It does.
And I'll slowly replace things, but
that's what I did. I started out with a microphone that I bought online. I paid $300, which was a lot of money when I first started out. Built my own space. Actually, I took over a closet, a big storage room, actually. It could be a small bedroom, very small, maybe 10 by 10, I think. Built a booth in the corner and then had a desk outside the booth. And it was just 2x4 stuffed with heavy insulation and lined with, covered on the inside with burlap. And it really, I got a lot of compliments from customers that your space sounds really good. And that's very important for people. And also for you, I see, because we're Zooming here, you've got a blanket behind you, which may be more for background, but packing blankets hung over PVC pipe. You can find plans on how to build that to dampen sound. My booth is wooden and it's got all the Arlex foam on the inside, but it's not soundproof. It's sound dampening. It's sound controlling, which is what you're looking for, I'm told.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've kind of thrown up some rough foam on the other side of the camera from me. I'm still sitting at a desk in a room with a curtain that hides my messy background.
Yeah, sure. All of us do that. I just put the grass up on Zoom, gives you options, and I did that way. But yeah, I think you're off and running, man, and kudos to you.
Thank you. I'm giving it my best shot.
I think you're going to do well.
Thank you. So jumping back to you, you've been narrating a lot of audiobooks. Like you said, you found kind of your genre. It sounds like you enjoy. Do you have an author that is like your kind of dream to work for?
When I was starting out narrating cowboy books, I auditioned for a 4-book set of Zane Grey novels. Now, Zane Grey is considered the hero, the quintessential writer of Western novels. He was writing in the early 1900s, and a lot of the early Hollywood Westerns were based on his novels. That's how big he is. So I like his writing. He's extremely verbose. He's very descriptive, but his character development is just amazing, and the interactions and plot and all of that. So I enjoy. I mean, each of those books were 10 hours long, and they can be bought through audible.com. Just look up my name, Roy Worley, as a narrator, and that'll be one of the books that'll pop up. Or you could just, look for Zane Grey. A lot of other narrators have done his books as well. Scott Harris, in that same genre, is a newer writer, and I narrated a series of his called Kaz, the Vigilante Hunter. And those books are about 3.5 hours long each. And Kaz, they don't build on each other because he rides around in the West taking out bad guys. And there's a little humor in it. There's always a good plot. And so Scott Harris is a good author. One of my favorite ones to read, because I am a Southerner, was set in Arkansas in the Civil War. And Arkansas is next door to Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm from. And the author did a great job. It's called Soldiers in the Mist. And I've never read anything else by her, but her plot development and character development was just fantastic. And I enjoyed that one. That one, I just totally lost myself, lost track of time and everything as I was narrating. I'm getting offers more and more into books that are bestsellers. Peter Zion in nonfiction, he was really fun to read. I enjoyed his. It's very informational, very interesting. And one of my producers reached out recently and said, "Hey, Apple has got something coming out. Are you available?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I'm waiting to hear if I get that or not. They'll definitely be auditioning a number of people. Sometimes you just get cast for a book. One that just recently came out, for those that are history buffs of World War II, I narrated Operation Tidal Wave, which was the story of the first American-led air bombing raid over Europe in World War II, where 176 U.S. bombers bombed a city called Ploesti, where there were 5 U.S.-made refineries. They were trying to take out the fuel supply for the Nazis. And it's a very, very interesting story, told from the point of view of one of the guys that was a pilot for one of those planes. And the author did a fantastic job. And I co-narrated that with another fellow who read the call-outs and different portions of the book, has a younger sounding voice. And it's a good book. It's a good book to hear, good book to read.
Yeah, and I think, having the right person definitely tends to make the audiobook. I know, at least for me, I think my favorite I've ever heard is, I want to say it's probably the original narration behind Orson Scott Card's first book, Ender's Game.
Oh.
And I don't know who does it, but something about his voice makes you forget that you're listening to him tell a story from the perspective of a 6-year-old.
I was that a movie? I think we saw that. Isn't Ender's Game a movie as well?
Yeah, they did make a movie a couple of years back too.
They did. Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they will hire a professional actor, maybe even a well-known actor, to do certain books. Those especially that were on, the New York Times bestseller list and things like that are very, very popular in written form. And the industry is growing because people enjoy, whether you realize it or not, research shows that your brain is more engaged in an audio only production as opposed to a video plus audio production. But when people are, and they'll hook people up to the whatever you call those things, they snap to your head and read your brain, and which is kind of scary. And they've done that for people that were listening to audiobooks, and man, it's like fireworks are going off. And then they'll show the same clip with video and audio, and the fireworks are diminished. But if you ask the person, which do you think you enjoyed more, they'll say the video. And yet the brain is saying something totally different. Yeah. And so when you have a great narrator who actually is a storyteller and not just a reader, then you do forget. My wife and I are listening to an audiobook. It's a John Grisham book called Sycamore Grove or something like that. And the narrator is absolutely fantastic. I wish I could remember his name. I don't do good with names anymore, but he does a fantastic job when he starts off just narrating general story. All of John Grisham's books are set in the South, and we're Southerners, and we're going, oh wow, he's not using a Southern accent. But when he reads for the characters, he's flawless. He's got to be from the South, because to my ear, I can tell when somebody is pretending to have a Southern accent and when somebody's genuine and real. And so this guy has to be Southern, and he does a fantastic job, not only with male voices, but with female voices, which for a male narrator, you can't go out there and talk like Mrs. Doubtfire, well, hello, it's just fake. Yeah. You've got to, in fact, Scott Brick, who's one of the most well-known narrators, he actually goes deeper intentionally for female voices, which is intriguing. He's good. I've listened to several of his works.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I was just talking to a guy. I really enjoyed having him on the podcast too. His name is Shane Salk, and he produces audio dramas.
Oh, cool.
And so he said one of the things that he really has enjoyed hearing from the audience is when they describe a scene, they're like, oh yeah, this moment where it's just these two and they're talking and they're going over this plan that they have, and they're down by the river and they're, like it's nighttime. And he's like, I didn't write any of that. We just, we said the lines. We, deliver the lines, and whatever came into your head is something that you put there.
Now, I would love to be a part of something like that. I had the privilege a few years back. There was a Christian organization that does kind of a radio show for children. And, it has Bible lessons and things, moral lessons in it. And all of the cast are lizards. Huh. But you don't see them because it's not video, right?
Sure.
And so the way they record this is they invite the actors to come into the studio. And I don't have an acting background, but I got to tell you, the synergy is so totally different when you're in the room seeing each other. You're sitting around in a half circle so you can all see the director in the sound booth, the engineering room. And it's fantastic. It's so much fun because you respond to whatever the other actor said and how they said it. And it makes it so much more real. So yeah, audio dramas, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really good. When I had first gotten into podcasting, like just listening, I had just stumbled into his first show that he had ever done. And so it was so weird to be now doing my own podcast. And one of the first guests that I found, out there, I was like, you know what? I have got to invite him, because this would be such a weird turn.
Oh, absolutely.
So it was a lot of fun, and it's, one of those I just picked up and started listening to his new stuff. And I find myself, imagining the scenario and all the dramatics going on, even that it talked to him. And I know that it's happening in a recording booth. And
that's crazy, man. It's good. It's really good. Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate your time, and I don't want to keep you too long. I don't know how long I have you for.
Oh, I got 20 more minutes.
All righty. So, it sounds like you found a lot of authors that you enjoy working for. If you got to pick your next project, what would it be?
Well, for audiobooks, that's hard to say. I consider myself still relatively new in the audiobook world, even though I've done a lot of those books I did were children's books for a company called Book Buddies out on the West Coast. I think they're based out of Oregon. And it was kind of a reading help program for children that struggle with reading. So they could check out a book, and while they're reading it, they're listening to somebody like me reading aloud. So they're following the words helps, with that. Who would I like to do? Wow. Man, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. It's such a broad and wide world out there.
Yeah. Well, and there's always so many projects up in the air and so many things going on.
That's exactly right.
So I always try and ask all of my guests this, just because I think it's interesting. I haven't gotten any bad answer yet, or any answer in the negative, I should say. But have you enjoyed your career in voice acting?
I have. Now there have been a lot of ups and downs. When you're self-employed, the challenge for voice actors is most of us are creatives, by nature. So that makes the business aspect of the business, because it is a business, a bit more challenging, much more challenging, particularly in the area of marketing. That is the biggest struggle that I hear other voice actors admit to. I enjoy it. There's certain aspects that I don't enjoy as much. I've done about a half a dozen audiobooks that are exam prep books. And so they're laden with a lot of facts. And so I kind of complained to my coach, Sean Pratt, and he admonished me. He said, look, that book may be dull to you, but it's important to the person who's trying to get their truck driver's license to make a living. Changed my whole perspective. I started thinking, I got to start talking to individuals, which you're taught to do anyway, even on these books, because people are listening. I did one on the national real estate exam. I did one on how to be a professional trainer. The last one I did was on some kind of laws. I don't even remember what it was, but you try to make it as engaging as possible. That's my job, is to keep people engaged. And you start thinking, well, the person that's listening to this is doing it because they're trying to make a living with this. And so it's much more important and kind of redefines why I'm doing it. But of all the things I do, that's the least enjoyable. I did a goofy commercial years ago for a Black Friday commercial for Sears when they were still alive, and got to do the over-the-top announcer voice, goofy type thing. Went into a studio in Chicago with another younger actor who played another role, and we had a lot of fun, a lot of synergy, feeding off of each other. That was a lot of fun. Anytime you can be with other people and do voice acting, it's a lot of fun. It's if you're not willing to work by yourself in a small room in a small box, you might want to reconsider going into voiceover. But I made the adjustment, and it's like when you get into the booth and you're telling a story, you lose yourself into the story in a positive way.
And that's, I'm sure, an incredible experience. But it also sounds like, if someone is looking to get into voice acting, you do need to be someone who has drive for themselves, because
Yes.
you have to market yourself a lot, and you've got to, keep your own track of time and stay to your deadlines.
Right. Now, that said, there are some great people on Facebook, online, in the voiceover community. There's a lot of pay it forward in the voiceover community. People who have been in the business for a while, helping other people to get, a leg up. Now, just getting into the business, you got to be a self-starter, like you just mentioned, but also you've got to, start saving back some money so that you can get your space and your equipment to the place where you need to be. But more importantly, the most important thing before you spend a dime on anything else is get coaching, professional coaching. After that, if your coach is in the business, they'll help you find somebody to develop a professional website and do your demos and things like that.
And how do you, I don't know why this just popped into my head, but how do you do a demo reel if you've never, had any other work?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, your coach or your demo producer, and in my next demos, my coach and my demo producer are good friends out in LA. And so they know each other and they work together. In fact, my coach recommended this person, Chuck Duran, is well known in the business, in the industry. And because of that, then, he will know my strengths. Recently had a 2-hour Zoom session with him, just deciding what we're going to record. And then he writes the copy. Okay. So a lot of times demo producers will take old copy of some commercial that's been seen on television, if you're just getting started out, and you read it, you perform it is a better way to put it. You act it out under the guidance of your coach, under the guidance of your demo producer, and they will make the final cut. They'll put it to video sometimes. That's another aspect, but most of the time it's just audio. And they will put the appropriate background music or any sound effects that may go with that. Like if it's outside on a city street, they may put that in the background, that kind of thing. So you don't have to come up with your own copy. If you're working with a professional coach and a professional demo producer, they will provide those things. Now, in the case of my man Chuck, he's customizing the scripts for me. And so that's going to be recorded on November 12th. I'll get back to you when they're live by December 1st. We'll see.
Yeah. Let me know. I'd love to, throw some stuff out there so that people can, follow up on the story because.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I have immensely appreciated your time. Where could people find more about you if they'd like to look you up?
Yeah, it's real easy. RoyWorley.com. That's RoyWorley.com. RoyWorley.com. And you can hear my current commercial demo, my current e-learning demo. There's also a page for audiobooks. In fact, the landing page is more about audiobooks at this point than it is about commercial or even promo. I have a current promo demo up, which is way old. That's why I'm getting a new one. And there's some sample videos of work I've done. I've had clients in Germany and Spain and France, India, different places. The world is small with the internet.
It sure is. My last hard question. This is the real mic drop question. If people have some Audible credits burning a hole in their pocket, what book that you've narrated should they pick up?
It depends on what they want. If they want a cowboy novel, they should check out all the books by Scott Harris. If they really want the classic ones, again, for cowboy books, Zane Grey, they're sold as a package deal, so you get more bang for your credit.
There you go.
There are 4 books, and you will have 40 hours of listening pleasure right there. If you're looking at geopolitical stuff, Peter Zion's book, Disunited Nations, there are, if you just go to Audible and put my name in a search, everything I've narrated will pop up.
Nice.
Except for those books, those kids' books I did for Book Buddies. They're not on Audible.
Right. So, yeah, I think I might go burn a credit myself on the World War II.
Yeah, baby. That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an exciting story for me. Just in the content, much less, now I know you and I want to hear you tell the story.
Well, here's what's really helpful is if people will take the time to write a review and list it on Amazon and or Audible, that really helps. It helps the author and it helps the narrator.
Well, there you go.
Even if they don't like it, that helps. Because if you've got all positives and no negatives, it's not realistic.
Sure.
All right,
there you go. Yeah, I've appreciated this immensely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's a real honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll touch base again later as things come out.
Keep me posted of how things are going for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty. Yep. Have a good rest of your day.
You do the same. Take care.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. If you haven't already, please go to whatever you're listening on and hit the follow button or the subscribe button. It helps us gain popularity and hopefully be listened to by more people. If you haven't already, recommend this show to your friends or your family or your enemies or your boss or your neighbor, or spray paint it on the side of a building. I don't know, something that won't get you in trouble though, hopefully. If you have any requests or questions or just want to chat, reach out to me. Just Dumb Enough Podcast on Facebook and everywhere, I guess. Or dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com. I promise those other episodes that people have asked for are coming soon, and hopefully, as a little treat for people who are listening live, there will be a second episode this week if I can find the free time to manage, which I should have. And then after that, I'm hoping to do 2 a week for a couple weeks while I'm actually on vacation. Which reminds me, if you are in the Tampa, Venice, or Miami areas of Florida, reach out to me and maybe we'll meet up in person. That'd be real awesome. I know we got a couple listeners in Florida. All right, until the next one, everybody. Bye-bye.